So I would like to share a little bit about another mission trip that I was on. This was also to a native reserve in Fort Severn. And this was an interesting trip for me because it was one where I was supposed to be going with a friend of mine who was the main evangelist that I was traveling with. And on this particular trip, he had invited me to speak in one of the sessions. We were going to be 3 or 4 days in this northern community of Fort Severn in northern Ontario. And he had ended up having a medical emergency, you might say, and wasn't able to travel. And so I was already halfway there on my flight when I found out that I would be the guy doing the meetings. And so it was interesting because as I was praying and preparing, knowing I was going to be speaking in one session, I had a series of messages that were coming, and 3 or 4 messages, and I was thinking, okay, well, that's strange. I'm going to be speaking in one session, but I've got 3 or 4 messages coming, and which one do I pick? And so then I found out that no, I would be doing all the sessions. So God in His grace had prepared me, and this was really the first time I'd ever done several meetings in a row anywhere. I would share, preach a little bit and share part of a meeting, and preach here and there one service, but never do like an extended series of meetings in any one location on my own. So it was a major stretch of faith. And I remember I was going to be preaching on how that Jesus was anointed to preach the good news and to heal the sick, and the passage it's in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, I believe, if my memory is correct on that, where Jesus says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, to preach good news, to set at liberty the captives or the prisoners, and recovery of sight for the blind." And so I really felt strongly to preach on that passage, and I had broken it down into, preaching the good news and recovery of sight, both spiritually and physically, and also setting the captives free, both spiritually and physically. And I remember, really, crying out to God to really not just preach on it, but to see those things happen. And as it turned out, over the several days, first thing that happened, I was taken around to some of the homes, and we were praying for people with sickness and various physical conditions in various homes. And after going to a couple of homes and praying for the sick and not seeing anything happen, I was like, God, you really have to do something. I'm here on your behalf, and please do something, kind of desperate. And so prayed for this one native elder, and he had had a liver condition and a lot of pain, either liver or kidney, I don't remember which it was, but when I prayed for him, immediately the pain left. And so then he said to me, well, can you pray for my eye also? And I said, well, what's wrong with your eye? And he said, well, I'm blind in one eye. And so without missing a beat, really, I said, okay, well, God just healed your kidney or your liver. Let's pray that God heals your eye. And so I laid hands on him and prayed for his eye. And so then after praying a bit of time, I said, is there any difference? And he said, no, there's no difference. And I said, okay, nothing's happened. He said, no, there's no difference. I can see out of the other eye the same as, the blind eye, the same as the eye that was the good eye. And so that was really quite amazing to see God actually, heal this man's blind eye. And it just got better as the days went on. There was, I heard after I'd come back from the trip, the one lady who had set up the meetings, as a result, well, she believed it was as a result of the word that I had released. She had gotten invited to begin preaching the gospel basically over the radio in a town further to the south. And it wasn't even a Christian radio station, but it was a radio station that was primarily run by Native peoples, and she got invited to basically preach the good news over the radio. So that was in fulfillment to the word that I had felt God give me. And then a few weeks later, after I was back, she called me up and she said, part of this sharing about getting invited to preach, she also said, and that's not all, she said there was a guy from our community who had been involved in some kind of a small crime, and he had been put in prison in the South, and we just heard that he's been released early and is going to be kind of on parole within the community and overseen by the community. So that God literally honored his word, and so I saw the blind healed, the gospel going forth, and the prisoners being released, which was really amazing. Yeah, so God's good.